Hello everybody. Let's start with today's session, which is on STLC. So we can begin now. STLC, Software Testing Lifecycle. So we saw SDLC in the previous session, wherein we discussed about what all phases a software has to go through for its successful completion. In STLC, we'll see what all steps we do as testers to successfully test a software. So as testing is one of the phase of SDLC, there are sub phases in the testing phase, which is called STLC. So we can see here it's one of the phase of SDLC, and it has its own phases starting from requirement review. So whatever requirements we get as a part of the SDLC is reviewed, analyzed, so that we can decide the scope, objectives, and the plan of testing. So all the requirements are properly reviewed in this first phase, so that we can be sure that okay, this particular software is testable. Or what is the scope of testing? Scope means what all testings we can apply. So let's say in the planning we came up with a solution that okay, the performance testing cannot be performed in this software. So performance testing goes out of the scope of that particular plan. So similarly, we can decide what all testing can be applicable, what are the feasible technologies, what are the feasible devices where we can test. So all the scope of testing is decided. Also, we do a walkthrough on the entire requirement to understand the objective of testing and what all we will be going to do as a part of the testing cycle. Now, after the review and analysis is complete, we go to the second phase of STLC, which is test planning. What happens here? We create a very important document here, which is called test plan, and we present it to the different teammates so that they come to know that what we are going to actually do as a part of testing. This test planning document contains a lot of information about what's going to happen. Example, it starts with the introduction, objective, scope of testing, people who are going to work in the testing team and their roles and the chronology. Then the tools and technologies what we are going to use. Let's say we are using Selenium as the automation tool, or we are using Jira for project management here. All the tools will be mentioned, which SDLC model we are going to use, waterfall A, waterfall V, agile, whatever we are going to use, that will be mentioned. Then the environments where we are going to test. So the devices where we are going to test, the operating system where the testing will happen. And if there is any simulator required, we have to mention that. Then which all, as I said, environment, so we have to mention that okay, fine, it will be on the UAT or testing environment, staging environment. So where all testing will happen will be mentioned. Then there will be more information like milestones, when and what we are going to deliver, test deliverables. Example, we are going to deliver the test case sheet, we are going to deliver the RTM, requirement traceability matrix, or we are going to deliver the test execution reports or the automation code or automation reports. So whatever deliverables we are going to give, will be mentioning that in the test planning. So the test plan is an entire set of information about what's going to happen as a part of the entire testing cycle. So that's happened in the test planning phase. Then the next phase is test designing phase. This is one of the most important phases of testing, because here we create or write test cases. Now we'll learn about test case writing in the test case writing session. We'll see how a test case sheet look like, what all columns are available in this sheet, and how do we create test cases. We'll take examples too. For now, you understand, we actually find out test scenarios and then write test cases for each scenario in this phase. This test case writing can be manual or automation. So test designing happens. After it is properly designed, we have the number of test cases with us now. Now we'll do a test environment setup. What is test environment setup? Here, before the execution, we should have all the hardware, software ready with us. So if it's a software which is built for a car dashboard, let's say, so we have to test it in a car dashboard setup or simulator. So we should have all the devices ready. Let's say we are doing the testing for an Android application. So we should have the proper Android phones or the software like browser stack where we actually are going to test. So all the credentials for the softwares which we are going to use, all the upgraded versions of the software, all the setup and the configurations for the tools and technologies. We should have the proper devices, proper operating system where we are actually going to perform the testing. So test environment is set, then we do the execution. So execution mean whatever test cases you had written in the test designing phase will be run, and we will be getting a results out of them to make sure that the test cases are pass or fail. If the test cases are pass, good enough. If any of the test cases are failing, we'll have to raise a relevant bug associated with that test case which is failing, because it has failed. So you have to raise an issue or defect so that it can be resolved by the developer, concerned developer. So test designing and test execution are two very important phases of SDLC. In the designing, we created the test cases. In the execution, we'll be executing or running them to find out the reports, to find out the results, and accordingly we'll be raising the bugs, and then those bugs will be managed, and at the end we'll make sure that all the issues are in closed status. So bug and bug life cycle is yet another topic which we will be learning. So for now you understand that we are actually writing test cases and executing them, be it manual or automation. If it's automation execution, we'll be getting reports which we have to actually submit in the next phase, which is test reporting. In the test reporting phase, we have to mention that the test, after the test execution, how many test cases are passed or fail, and in the reports you might also have to mention that okay, this is the current status of all the open bugs, these many are closed now, these many are retested now, these many has been reopened. So there can be different matrices which you need to maintain or which you have to submit to the higher management in order to make sure that all the important calculations are being maintained, be it in a bug information, bug status, or defect leakage ratio, or maybe the number of automation test cases which failed, or how many regression issues were raised. So there can be different matrices which might be required by the client or the stakeholders, and we have to present it in the test reporting phase. So here again, revising the STLC steps, it starts with designing or reviewing the requirements, and then it goes on to test plan document creation, then test case writing, then test environment setup, test cases execution, and test reporting. Let's move forward and see a quick, okay, this is a explanation of all the steps which I already did. You can just go through all the explanation properly. Then we do a quick comparison between SDLC and STLC. Now these are two different terms. SDLC means software development lifecycle, STLC means software testing lifecycle, but then how they are related, you know, how SDLC and the phases of SDLC are so similar to the phases of STLC. We'll just compare quickly and see. So in the SDLC, you know that the first phase is about gathering all the requirement and analyzing all those requirements and reviewing them and planning for the next move. But in STLC, the first phase is about analyzing the requirements. So they are very much similar set of steps. There we are gathering it. Here we are actually analyzing for the testing activities. Second, here in the SDLC is designing of those requirements into documentations. Here what we are doing, we are creating test plan document here. So this is yet another documentation wherein we are actually properly creating all the roadmaps of testing which is going to be performed. So test planning is happening in an analogous phase as that of designing in the SDLC. Now, in SDLC, when coding and implementation is happening, when actual coding is happening, similar phase in STLC is about writing test cases. We are actually designing our own test suite. So that is the similar phase in STLC as that of coding in STLC. Now, when actual testing is happening in SDLC, so what we are doing as a part of actual testing activities, executing the test cases. So here we are doing the test environment setup and executing the test cases so that we can create the reports. Now when there is actual deployment happening, moving of the code from one phase to another, here we are actually creating and submitting the reports of testing. Similar phase. And here when maintenance activities are going on, here also testing team also performs the maintenance activities. They are also involved in the same contract as that of the maintenance which happens with the client. So you can see there's a very beautiful comparison between SDLC and STLC and how each phase of SDLC is being followed in the STLC also similarly. So that's all for today. Today we talked about STLC, software testing life cycle, all the phases, and then we did a quick comparison between SDLC and STLC. That's all for today. In the next session, we'll be learning about SDLC models. We'll start with the waterfall model to begin with. Thank you everyone.